could ask the Sergeant at Arms to call the absent members and help us collect a quorum, we would appreciate that. And if we could also ask the Sergeant at Arms to call the members of the Assembly and indicate that we are awaiting authors, and the first author to arrive we would be happy to take up, even if it's in a subcommittee for purposes of simply hearing the bill. Ladies and gentlemen, it is 1:30. This is the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. We are awaiting authors. If Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal or Assemblymember Fuentes or Blumenfield or Hill or Rambula or Chesbro or Monning or Mendoza or Block are within the sound of my voice, if they came to room 112, they would be first up. Once again, we are awaiting authors in Senate Environmental Quality, and we are looking for Assembly Members Lowenthal, Fuentes, Blumenfield, Hill, Arambula, Chesbro, Monning, Mendoza, and Block. We've also asked the Sergeant at Arms to call the absent members. Senate Environmental Quality, if Senators Runner, Ashburn, Corbett, Hancock, Lowenthal, and Pavlik could join the committee in room 112, the committee would be able to commence business. We understand Senator Corbett has a conflict with Senate Business and Professions, but again, if all members could please join the committee, we could begin our business. Thank you.
peddling in the contract.
Yeah.
We got some amendments in there that we were never officially opposed to it, but we made it, it's actually a little less than it was yeah, the way that it's according to these guys, like any case where the business is actually required, it's on our so it's essentially, you guys found that not to be the case? Or? Absolutely. A lot of them? So it's an apartment.
Good. Are we up first? Or do we have to determine who's up?
Actually, if he got here, he'd be on the floor. He just presented the whole thing. Yeah, so there's some. Are you aware of the
Yeah, Colin was really good. So, appreciate the being forthright about it. They changed the work for you guys at all? Yeah.
This is the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. If we could ask Assembly members Bonnie Lowenthal, Fuentes, Blumenfield, Hill, Arambula, Chesbro, Monning, Mendoza, Blumenfield, Block to join us, we could take up any one of their measures. I understand actually Assembly Member Arambula's bill has now been placed on our consent calendar. Is that correct? Correct. So Assembly Member Arambula need not attend.
You look.
You did your part.
They'll take anybody who shows.
Sergeant Arms, could you call the absent committee members so that we could establish a quorum? If we had one more, we could establish a quorum, which would allow us to conduct business.
Recommending one year.
Hill, thank you for joining us. We're here with 3 members. We're going to operate as a subcommittee, and we're going to call you first up. So if you just take your place, take a moment to catch your breath if you like. We understand that members are trying to be in 2 or 3 places at once today.
As always, thank you, Mr. Simitian.
To our agenda item number 4, if we could have quiet in the room, please, and if the Sergeant at Arms could help us with that. We are looking at AB 499, and Assemblymember Hill, please begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and honorable senators. AB 499 clarifies that the real party in interest named in a California Environmental Quality Act lawsuit for a particular project are those listed by the lead agency as recipients of approval in the agency's notice of exemption or in the notice of determination. Under current law, these recipients of approval are the indispensable parties which must be notified in case of a lawsuit. Unfortunately, in many cases, the entity bringing the lawsuit is unclear as to who these parties are. However, failure to name all recipients of approval can lead to the case being thrown out, which is what occurred in the Court of Appeal in County of Imperial versus Superior Court. To prevent important cases from being dismissed, CEQA practitioners are forced to overname and overserve parties who might or might not be considered indispensable to ensure no one has been missed. In some cases, project proponents use project managers who are designed as the project applicant, but are not always the actual recipient of approval. This practice makes it extremely difficult, even for those who participated in the CEQA process, to know which parties must be included in a lawsuit. AB 499 would eliminate the current inefficiencies by amending CEQA to clarify which parties must be named in litigation regarding a CEQA project. This bill has no known opposition, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote. With me today is Tina Andolina with the Planning and Conservation League.
Thank you very much, and you look to be in good shape, so if we could ask the witnesses to keep their remarks brief and perhaps just respond to questions, if any, from members of the committee. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tina Andolina, the Planning and Conservation League. We support this measure.
Thank you.
I'm here also on behalf of the Planning and Conservation League. My name is Bill Yates. I'm just here to answer questions.
Thank you both. Do we have any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in support. Are there witnesses in opposition? We can't move the bill quite yet because we're awaiting one more member of the committee to give us a quorum of 4. So we're hearing the bill in subcommittee. As soon as a committee quorum can be established with 4 members, we will turn back to Senator Hancock, ask her to make the motion, and take action on the bill at that time. Any opposition on the bill? If not, then we'll say stay right there, Assembly Member. Clerk will call the roll.
Simitian.
Here.
Runner. Here. Ashburn. Corbett. Hancock. Here. Lowenthal. Here. Pavley.
Quorum has been established. A motion is in order. Senator Hancock moves the bill. Actually, Senator Hancock's going to hold off on moving the bill because we're going to try and be a little bit tighter about holding off on motions until all of the questions have been asked and answered. Senator Runner.
Just a quick question. Very similar language we've had in the past. Senator Kuehl had a bill vetoed by the governor. Appears this language is very much the same.
Yeah, there are some minor changes to the language which clarifies, and perhaps Tina could explain a little bit better.
Well, let me ask you more specifically. Is the language that you have changed then the concerns that the governor's office has?
Yes. In fact, the new amendments from June 18th, we are hoping directly deal with the governor's opposition. Now that the bill is print, we're hoping to get some feedback on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we go to a motion? Motion by Senator Hancock. Yes, Senator Hancock moves the bill. So moved. Call the roll.
Simitian.
Aye.
Simitian, aye. Runner.
No.
Runner, no. Ashburn.
No.
Ashburn, no. Corbett. Hancock. Hancock, aye. Lowenthal. Aye. Lowenthal, aye. Pavley. 3 yes and 2 no.
You have 3 votes. You need 4. We'll place the measure on call so that absent members may vote once they arrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Assemblymember Lowenthal, welcome. You are agenda item number 1, AB 248.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. AB 248 is a tool to get a little more information to help us protect coastal waters from invasive species, and I'm happy to accept the committee's clarifying amendments. We want a little bit more information as we begin a multi-year phase-in period, after which all ships visiting California ports will have to meet State Lands Commission ballast water treatment standards. This bill requires shipmasters to transmit to the Commission specific information about treatment systems used, as well as maintain aboard the ship technical data, performance logs, and use records related to the ballast water treatment system. This information is essential to determine if any changes need to be made to the standards or implementation process, as larger and older ships are required to meet the new standards. The bill will also allow the State Lands Commission to adopt new regulations for needed data as necessary. The bill has no opposition and is supported by the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association and the Association of California Water Agencies. We have Mario DiBernardo and Moria Faulkner from the State Lands Commission to testify on behalf of the bill and answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you very much. And Assemblymember Lowenthal, you look like you're in good shape. Brief testimony, if any.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Mario DiBernardo with the State Lands Commission, conveying the Commission's support, strong support and sponsorship of this bill. And basically all I want to add to Ms. Lowenthal's comments is that a similar bill was introduced last year and passed the Senate with no votes. And this is a very similar bill. The last year's bill received the generic veto message.
Thank you very much. Any other witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? Are there comments or questions from the committee? If not, could we have a motion? Motion by Senator Hancock. Any close, Senator? Excuse me, Assemblymember Lowenthal, any close?
I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Semidian?
Aye.
Semidian, aye. Runner?
Aye.
Runner, aye. Ashburn? Ashburn, no. Corbett? Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lowenthal? Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Okay. Four yes, one no.
Ayes 4, noes 1. You have sufficient votes, but we're going to hold the roll open for absent members so they may add on. Thank you very much. Do we have any of our other authors here? Assemblymember Fuentes, Assemblymember Blumenfield, Assemblymember Chesbro, Assemblymember Monning, Assemblymember Mendoza, Assemblymember Block. Members, we do. Members, here's what we're going to do in the absence of members. We're going to do two things. First is we're going to go ahead and ask for a motion on the consent calendar, which is one bill, that is AB 752, Arambula. Do we have a motion on the consent calendar? Thank you, Senator Runner. Call the roll on the consent calendar, one bill, AB 752.
Semidian?
Aye.
Semidian, aye. Runner?
Aye.
Runner, aye. Ashburn?
On the consent calendar, sir?
Ashburn, aye. Corbett? Hancock?
On the consent calendar?
Hancock, aye. Lowenthal? Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. That's 6 yes.
Ayes 6, no 0. We will hold the roll open on the consent calendar.
Lowenthal.
We're going to go next members to Assemblymember Monning, who has just walked in the door, and if he would join us at the table, I'd be happy to hear his item, which is AB 1069, agenda item number 8. Welcome, Assemblymember Monning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm presenting AB 1069. It's a bill intended to restore the public's confidence and trust in state agencies when a decision is made requiring a pest eradication effort. In 2008, former member John Laird authored legislation that was chaptered into law outlining requirements of the Department of Food and Agriculture once a determination is made that a pest eradication effort will be performed. Among these requirements includes the specification for establishing a telephone hotline. AB 1069 is a measure to clarify and expound on the language included in Mr. Laird's bill. Specifically, AB 1069 requires CDFA to make the telephone hotline number toll-free and staffed by public health personnel who are familiar with the pesticide being applied. Additionally, this bill requires all reported adverse health complaints to be entered into a database. Finally, AB 1069 requires that the toll-free hotline number be included on the notices sent out to the public prior to the eradication, as well as its intention to be used for reporting adverse health consequences. I'd like now to turn it over to my witness in support of this bill, Mr. Paul Shramsky, State Director for Pesticide Watch, with the permission of the Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Montague. Mr. Shramsky, if we could ask you to limit your remarks to about 2 minutes, that would be great.
Certainly. I'll keep it very short. Again, my name is Paul Towers. I'm the State Director of Pesticide Watch. Simply put, AB 1069 is meant to address the problems of large-scale pesticide spraying, meant to clarify the legislation passed this last year while drawing on federal rather than state dollars. The scope of this bill is relatively narrow, adding additional integrity and greater access to a hotline, but more importantly, there will be no new additional cost to this program. As Mr. Monning identified, the three main points of this bill are, again, to make the telephone hotline toll-free, to add that critical expertise to the other end of the hotline so that when individuals call with concerns, to make sure that those questions can be answered, and to make sure that the data is collected and shared with OEHA and appropriate state agencies when folks are victims of pesticide poisoning. Again, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. And if we could get your name once more for the record, just
Sure.
get the right name on the record,
Yeah,
please.
it's Paul Towers.
Thank you, Mr. Towers. Nice to see you again. Do we have any other witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition? Any witnesses in opposition? Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Senator Hancock?
Thank you, Senator Simidian. I just wanted to say that I live in a part of California that's been extremely concerned about this issue as well and continues to be concerned. So I think it's very good that we finally have a bill that has no opposition, that can inform people, and that can allow us to keep records of any ill effects to people's health. If there is an opportunity as the bill moves forward, Assembly Member, I would like to be added as a co-author, and I would move the bill.
Before we take the motion, we have additional discussion from Senator Runner.
They're not letting us talk after we make a motion, apparently.
Senator Runner.
Okay. Just a quick question. The comment was no new cost. Explain that to me.
I'm happy to respond to that. Currently, whenever a federal government declares a moratorium on, or declares that a area is quarantined or that there is an emergency eradication program in place, that program then dedicates federal dollars to that program. This emergency hotline would use some of those emergency dollars for the telephone hotline.
And what is the current operating procedure for the department on these cases?
Well, there have been very few of them, and in the past, the current hotlines have been routed either through county public health officers or wherever folks may find some help on the other end of the line. Currently, the CDFA...
The state hadn't, for instance, in the last use, the state had no hotline?
The hotline that was erected late in the game was a informational hotline about the pest itself rather than any of the impacts from the aerial spraying incidents.
If I might just comment on that as well, Senator. In the area that I represent, Monterey-Santa Cruz County was one of the main spray areas for the light brown apple moth, and some private citizens established a catalog of complaints and reported health impacts, but there was no official registry, and so it's left the state without good data to refer to, and also did not provide people concerned about potential adverse health effects with some guidance as to where they might go to get further medical treatment or screening. This would be cooperated with CDFA and possibly with the poison control centers, which are equipped to take this type of phone call.
If there's no cost to CDFA on this, what has been their response to this bill?
No opposition. We look forward to working with them in terms of implementation.
no opposition, does that mean that they've not taken a position yet?
I'm not aware of an official position. We have spoken to representatives of CDFA. We look forward to working with them to make it an effective program.
Okay, thank you.
Further debate or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, Senator Hancock. Thank you, Senator. Call the roll. Oh, any close?
Respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Call the roll.
Semidion?
Aye.
Semidion, aye. Runner?
No.
Runner, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. Corbett? Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. It's 4 yes, 2 no.
Ayes 4, noes 2. You have sufficient votes for the bill to clear the committee, but we're going to hold the roll open for absent members. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members.
Assemblymember Fuentes, welcome. This is agenda item number 2, AB 301.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. This bill was a victim of a generic veto. It really was. This bill is very simple in nature. It would require that water bottlers in their Department of Public Health application to disclose information regarding the volume of water that's extracted and the source of the water, that is public or private. It would also require DPH to make this information available to the public. This bill, like I said, we introduced it last year. It's a simple measure, but I think it's an important measure so that local communities understand the impact that water extraction has and its availability of water has in a community. So with that, I'm presented here with the sponsor of the bill, Vern, with Food and Water Watch.
Yeah, Vern Garing, representing Food and Water Watch. We're happy to sponsor the bill and work with Mr. Fuentes the second year in a row on this bill. As you know, the bill passed this committee last year, so I'm not going to go through a lot of detail. Many of you are familiar with it. Increasingly, our communities and our public is concerned about the status and what's happening to their local water, their aquifers. More and more people are learning about where their water comes from and where it goes, and this is a simple bill to try to provide them better information on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Lori Chen, on behalf of Clean Water Action, the 60,000 members in California have asked that you support AB 301.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have any other witnesses in support? If not, witnesses in opposition. In support?
My name is Laura Hoffman.
Ms. Hoffman, we want to hear every word, even if it's just to tell us your name, your organization, and your position.
Good afternoon. I'm Laura Hoffman from the Planning and Conservation League, and we are in support of this bill.
Thank you so much. Are there any other witnesses in support? Do we have witnesses in opposition on the bill? In opposition, please step forward. Thank you.
Members of the committee, George Skrodakis, Department of Public Health. The department is opposed to this bill. We believe it does not provide any public health protection. There's also a cost to the bill, collecting the data sets for the type of water, where it's collected, and for getting a contract for the database.
And don't forget that you also think that the information they already collect is sufficient to protect quality.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, I want to make sure we got all three of your 3 points in there before we gave members an opportunity to weigh in on the measure. Why don't you stay put? Senator Ashburn, you have comments or questions?
You really don't want
Thank you. Senator Pavley. We want to hear from all of our members who have thoughtful comments and questions.
Related to the author of the Department of Public Health comments, and I read that committee analysis. What was the cost and appropriation for the Department of Public Health to create the database? I know the public is very interested in knowing all about where their water comes from, and that's a huge. I support the concept. I was just curious for a point of clarification.
I'm reminded by my very capable staffer that it was $70,000 to create the database.
Because we had a lower threshold, that's why I was asking on.
Yeah, 70,000.
Was that finances or was that assembly appropriations?
Assembly appropriations.
Did finance have an estimate?
Our department is the one that came up with the estimate. We had $45,000 for the staffer and $25,000 for the contract.
All right. Are there additional comments or questions? Any Senator Pavley?
Just that, to the author, again, may want to check in with our appropriations staff, because I think our threshold was around 50,000, or almost everything was held. So
Right.
we may have to figure this out along the way. But I certainly support the concept. I think it's a good bill.
Thank you, Senator.
Assembly Member Fuentes, the reason I pressed the department on its 3 points is my understanding as we look at this bill, and again, is that the starting point in having this conversation is to know what is and isn't happening. And unless you have this information, you really can't have the broader discussion that I think you hope to pursue. So while I understand the department's concerns and arguments, I think you make a good case that we're hard pressed to have the conversation we need to have until we know who's doing what, where, and with what effect on whom. So would you like to close?
I would. The department failed to also mention another concern that they've got. They've got 4. So just for the record, in order to help the department out here, they have a concern about the proprietary nature of the information and the release of the information, which I think is an interesting concern for the Department of Public Health to have. But again, this measure, the policy question before us, members, is whether we ought to empower communities with more knowledge and information about water extraction. And while I think there's a balance there to be had in terms of how much information is allowed or how you code the information, I think it's incredibly important to know what the demand is on our local underground water, our aquifers. So with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. I think Senator Pavley's giving you good advice on trying to work through the appropriations issues.
I heard it loud and clear.
This side of the building. Looking for a motion. Thank you. Motion by Senator Pavley. Call the roll.
Simitian?
Aye.
Simitian, aye. Runner? Runner, no. Ashburn?
No.
Ashburn, no. Corbett? Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lowenthal? Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. It's 4 yes and 2 no.
You have sufficient votes. Ayes 4, noes 2, but we're going to hold the roll open for absent members.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We are looking for authors in the Senate Environmental Quality Committee. If Assembly members Blumenfield, Mendoza, or Block could join us, or Chesbrough. Thank you. We have done the consent calendar. Members, what we're going to do as a courtesy to the members who are here is lift the call on all items now so that folks who are asking the first couple of bills could add on at this point. Let's go to agenda item number 1, AB 248. Current vote is 4-1. Call the absent members.
Corbett? Pavley? Pavley, aye.
5-1. I'm going to hold the roll open. Agenda item number 2, AB 301, Fuentes, 4-2. We just did. All members present and voting. We're going to hold the roll open for an absent member. File item number 4, AB 499. The current vote on that is 3-2. Please call the absent members.
Corbett? Pavley? Pavley, aye.
4-2. We're going to hold the roll open for absent members. File item number 5, AB 752, is our consent calendar. We have a 6-0 vote on that with all the members who are present voting, but we'll hold the roll open for the absent members. Members, agenda item number 6, Caballero, has been pulled at the author's request for today. File item number 8, we have a 4-2 vote with all of the current members present voting. I believe that means we have all the members voting who are present here, and we're holding the roll open for our one absent member, and that's Senator Corbett, who's doing double duty today on business and professions. We need authors. We're looking for Assembly Member Blumenfield, Chesbrough, Mendoza, and Block. Assembly Members Blumenfield, Chesbrough, Mendoza, and Block. Sergeant Arms, if you could call those members and ask them to join us and let them know that we're ready to take up their bills. Assembly member, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Your timing's excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Take a moment, take a breath. Feel free to present your measure.
Good morning, or good afternoon, Senators, and am pleased to be here to present to you today AB 1507, which will help metal plating facilities in California meet the state's requirements for safe disposal of chrome plating waste. It helps small businesses and it reduces environmental pollution at the same time. Very briefly, the state currently has a loan guarantee program to assist facilities with upgrading and replacement of chrome pollution control equipment. However, no businesses have utilized this loan program. This bill converts the loan guarantee program into a grant program to provide incentives to small businesses for the cost. The cost of this grant program now will be identical to the cost of the loan guarantee program, so there's no additional cost to the state budget. I agree with the committee's recommendation. Committee staff has recommended that we have amendments as noted in section 4 of the committee analysis, and I'll work with committee staff to make sure that these comments in the analysis are addressed. And is Jerry here? With me today we have Jerry Desmond, who will testify on behalf of the Metal Finishing Association of Northern California and Southern California.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Members Jerry Desmond Jr., representing the Northern and Southern Metal Finishing Associations, 250 job shop metal platers, and we agree that the program will provide a helpful incentive for exceeding pollution prevention requirements. There are new requirements that have gone onto the books recently, and with the downturn in manufacturing, we're finding many of the small job shop platers, business are down up to 75%. We're in support.
Are there other witnesses in support? Are there any witnesses in opposition? We have a question from Senator Runner. Let me thank the author for his willingness to take the recommended amendment as author's amendments in this committee.
Yes.
Great. Senator Runner.
Follow-up question. I actually voted for the previous version of this, and I'm struggling to figure out how it is that you could have a loan guarantee program that costs the same, or a grant program now that costs the same as a loan guarantee. I mean, maybe it's just me. A loan guarantee means that the state will see that a loan is made and will back it up, but then there's a repayment for that loan. A grant program is a check to be written out. How can it be the same?
Well, the state has set aside enough money to guarantee X number of loans, and the money that had to be set aside had to be enough to actually back those loans. Now, that same money is being used. It won't cover as many grants as the loans would have covered, because some of the loans certainly would have been paid, but some may have been guaranteed. But the pot of money, what we're doing is taking the same pot of money that's been set aside and dividing it up as guarantee money.
But the difference would have been, isn't the difference, though, the fact that the state set aside the money for a loan guarantee program, but the idea was that the money would be being paid back. So the state set aside the money in case the loans weren't paid back. None of the loans were taken out, so therefore the state never had to do that.
Correct.
Now we're going to just grant the money. So now we can guarantee that the money's going to go out.
Jerry, do you want to speak to that?
With Senator Jerry Desmond involved in the previous legislation as well, what we have found since the loan guarantee program has been on the books is that the financial situation for the businesses is such that no loans were taken out. And so the loan guarantee program is being replaced with parameters with a grant program that is going to be limited in terms of the amount. We'll have criteria in terms of proximity to a sensitive population, in terms of the kind of pollution equipment they will buy, and a cap on the amount per facility. As the Senator and the committee have noted, there are 900 facilities statewide, and of the $3 million that is available, we're fighting against a $200,000 administrative fee that is being charged to the fund, even though loans are being given out. And that is the reason to transition now to a small grant.
So in essence, if we went ahead and just did away with the program, we would actually then be making money. The state would actually receive the money back that it was going to guarantee.
Yes.
Okay. So in essence, we are taking a program that wasn't successful because people didn't want to take the loans out. And now what we're going to say is, since we've already got the money set aside, we're going to go ahead and now make it a grant program. And the state is in this incredibly bad economic position, and we're going to give the money back rather than just going ahead and putting the money back in the general fund. that is, what, $22 billion in, right? 24? Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay.
One little piece, though, and that's to question the dollars that were set aside for the loan program. Where did those come from? Was that general fund, or was it from a special fund, or was it from some kind of
I believe it was a special fund. Special fund goes back before this program was established.
So what was the source of the funding?
Let me see if our staff can respond to the question.
Senator Ashburn, there was a hazardous waste reduction loan program that was initially housed at the Department of Toxic Substances Control. When the program that loan fund was funding went defunct, they had the special funds for hazardous waste reduction set aside. They used that money then to create the chrome plating chrome pollution prevention.
Is it B money or general fund money at the source?
My understanding from the department is they believe that it was special fund, but I'm waiting to hear back from the department as to whether but my understanding was that it was initially a fee.
I mean, I think it's a critical question because, as Senator Runner has underscored, we have a rather significant general fund problem, and so if these were general fund dollars set aside, we may want to consider using these monies for different purposes. If they were in fact special fund dollars, maybe based on industry fines or assessments or something, that would be another area of consideration. So I mean, until I knew that, I wouldn't be able to vote on this.
Members, let me do a couple things at this point. First, let me welcome back to the committee staff Rachel Mackey-Wagner, who's back on our staff. Delighted to have her. Thank you for that information. Second, with respect to the question that's currently before us, the chair's view is that I think we've got most of the facts, but not all the facts out on the table, which is the reason the program won't, quote, cost the state anything is because the money's already in the fund. And so we're not talking about additional funds. We're talking about using the funds there. As Senator Runner points out, the difference, of course, is that these funds will be exhausted. They get spent once. It's a finite amount of money. Then once they're spent, they're gone, as opposed to a loan program where the funds could have been used on a recurring basis once they had been repaid. As to the issue of whether or not the funds might be swept into the general fund, while it's true the state has a multi-billion-dollar shortfall, also a hard time out there in the economy for many of these small businesses, so I'm sure that's the argument that Assemblymember Block's going to make in a minute in terms of the need or desirability of using the funds for these purposes. This, of course, is a policy committee and not the fiscal committee, so I do think we want to caution Mr. Block that he may have some challenges when he gets to the Appropriations Committee. The bill is keyed fiscal, and at that point, the Appropriations Committee can make the judgment about whether or not they feel the need to sweep the funds up. I wish you well, Assemblymember, but I can tell you the chair's had his own bills held in the Assembly Committee, even though it was a special fund measure, because the funds were deemed sweepable by the good folks at Senate Appropriations. So I'll be supporting the bill in a moment. Let's go back to other members. Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I do have some questions about the bill. So the analysis says there are about 900 of these chrome plating shops, and they're the second highest hazardous waste generator in the state. How many of the 900 would need a grant? And if the grant amounts are capped and there is not enough money in the fund to fully bring all the 900 into compliance, what happens to the clean air issues?
Assemblymember, before you respond, let me just indicate that the amendments that the Assemblymember has agreed to take today, among the 4 amendments, are one that indicate that the grants are for improvements, not compliance measures, because the expectation was that the various businesses would meet their compliance obligations as a matter of law. That is required. So the primary goal here in allowing for the grant program is to pull these folks into a special program, which some of them have not yet stepped up and participated in, and perhaps either the author or his witness would like to, in response to your question, explain
Are
what
you
that
saying
program is.
therefore additional improvements to air quality and hazardous waste management?
Improvements above and beyond mere compliance, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Desmond, do you want to respond a little bit?
And with that clarification being made in the amendment today, it's not clear how many will be able to purchase new equipment to exceed compliance, but we know that there's, for instance, a recent ATCM for chrome emissions where they are retrofitting and putting on chrome filters. Well, it's going to be a good question whether that they have to have that equipment exceed the requirements that are on the books in order for this to kick in. We have been also in discussions with the author and the committee about placing a monetary cap per loan on per facility, criteria that talk about the department to look at how close you are to sensitive receptors. What is the advantage to the environment by having this facility receive the funding, and also other criteria that will come into play. So I'd imagine we represent about 250 of the 900 job shop metal finishers. I would imagine there would be dozens that could apply potentially for this.
Also, the analysis references the model shop program, but says that no metal finishing businesses have joined it. Could someone explain what that is and why they haven't?
Yes, Jerry Desmond again with the associations. DTSC has established a job shop program that is a performance-based voluntary program for these job shops to enter into to reduce and prevent pollution. As the program has rolled out, there had been a bit of a reluctance to share with the agency you have to open their doors and open their shops to them. But over the last year or so, there has been an initiative that has moved forward. I believe Sheffield Plating down in the San Diego area now has become a job shop. We're in discussions with the new director, Movisagi, and others to bring others in. So one is in. I think other applicants are joining, and we think we're at a threshold moment for participation in that, and it will still be a criteria for receiving the funding here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Lowenthal.
Yeah. It's a little unclear when we started that questioning on where the money comes from on page 3 of the analysis, where it says the loan guarantee program went into effect in January 2006. No CPP fund money has been appropriated to provide assistance. I understand that. But then the next sentence, the one that I do not understand, it says CPP fund appropriations have been limited. First it says to 278. In 2006-7, 283,000 in 7-8, 324,000 8-9, and it's proposed in the budget of 312,000 in 9-10. So this fund is growing, is what it said. There is money, and so it really is important to understand where this money is coming from and how much, and whether it's the fund was originally, since there's additional monies that keep coming every year, it must be generated from someplace. Somebody is putting money into this fund. Is it the businesses themselves?
Let me go back to our committee consultant who can explain the numbers in the analysis.
Thank you. There were, under the hazardous waste reduction loan program that was at DTSC,
right,
several loans had gone out. I think about 20 loans had gone out. And so as those loans are being paid back, they go into this fund.
Okay, so we don't know how many more are out?
Excuse me. I think that, as I understood, the consultant is talking about the original underlying loan program, which as those loans, which were made, are repaid, now are repaid to a new loan program from which loans have not been made.
Right, and do we know whether that old loan program, which is now having loans repaid, is still in operation in any way? Are they putting out any loans, or are these loans very similar to that original loan?
There are no additional loans being put out from that original program. That program no longer exists at DTSC. So the money is now going back into this new loan.
And I may have missed it. Why is no one availing themselves to the loans?
My understanding, and Mr. Desmond might be able to speak better to this, but my understanding is that the amount of the loans and the indebtedness was not particularly appealing to the Chrome. They didn't have the money to pay back once they made the improvements.
Correct.
Is that accurate?
Just a follow-up question on that same line. The money that has been accumulated for these, was it these industries that were putting that, had paid those fees in the past to put that money into place?
My understanding of the original loan program was that it was broader than this hazardous waste program. But again, I didn't get back from DTSC specifically where that money came from.
So in that sense, there was this broader base of dollars available through a fine program of some kind, or was it fines established?
No, it was I'm sorry, I can't,
Okay.
the
Either came by
some sort of
fees or
fee.
fines, or one
Yeah.
or the other. Fees or fines. It came from a broad group of people. And now the idea here, and then before then we had this extra money. So then the idea was, well, since we've got the extra money, let's go ahead and have a loan program where this one segment can try to borrow money from it. The idea being get paid back mostly, not a grant program. The idea is loan it. So the fund basically kind of tries to stay whole. Now what we're doing is converting it to a grant program, to where now all these other people who paid these fines or fees are not the beneficiaries of the ones who are going to be getting the grants. Is that a fair summary?
Well, I would say that it's
No, I believe, based on the information staff has shared with us, that the plating folks who are here before us today are a subset of the larger group who previously.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I didn't mean that they were excluded from it. I meant that they would be a subset of that group. Yeah,
Which, Mr. Chairman, takes us back to the question of a few minutes ago. The source of the funds that are now in a loan program but are going to be converted to free money as a giveaway, it's essential to know who pays those funds, where they came from. We don't have that answer today, and so it's not possible to render a decision on this bill.
Well, let me just say, Senator, without having any view on the subject that I want to press on you, one person's giveaway is another person's assistance to small business during a difficult recessionary time. And I'm sure that's the argument we would get. That being said, Assemblymember, the chair would suggest that you might want to hold this measure over while we get an answer to this question, because it's a question now that has been raised by a number of members on both the majority and the minority of the committee, and I think we might have a more fruitful conversation if we allowed you to come back one more time. Does that work for you?
Yeah, the chair would like to do that. The author would like to do that, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. Well, then we'll thank you for your patience today. Members, without objection, we'll hold the measure over till our next meeting at the author's request, and we'll try and get the information that's been requested from the folks at DTSC between now and that time, and that will allow members to make a fully informed judgment when the bill comes back to us for final resolution. All right, then without objection, we'll say thank you. And to the half-dozen interns who are here from the Summidian office in the 11th Senate District, it's the state government at work you just watched, all right? So we'll bring our next author up. I think that's going to be Mr. Chesbro. You are next up, sir. We are working on agenda order, even though Mr. Mendoza was here a little bit earlier.
Hopefully I'll be brief.
There you go.
That's a shared wish.
Thank you. It's partly up to you, so how brief I am. Mr. Chairman, members, first let me say I accept the proposed committee amendments to AB 903. AB 903 would require state agencies to include information on e-waste reduction and methods of disposal in their annual waste diversion reports required to be made to the California Integrated Waste Management Board. AB 903 would require the report to include the extent to which a state agency intends to utilize programs or facilities established by a local agency for the handling, diversion, and disposal of electronic waste. This bill stems from a Bureau of State Audit's report, which indicated that state agencies are, unlike what we're incentivizing and encouraging individuals and businesses to do, are inappropriately disposing of hundreds of e-waste items in the trash as opposed to putting them through the state's recycling program.
Basically, this is a practice what you preach bill. It requires state agencies to begin to do what we very much want to be done throughout the private sector as well. So I would certainly encourage your aye vote and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chisper. Before we go to witnesses, we do have a question from Senator Corbett.
I had a question. Can you share with us which agencies were not recycling their e-waste?
I don't have the audit in front of me, so I do not have a list, but I'd be happy to provide you with that.
That would be great. And were there several, or?
It's widespread. It is widespread throughout state government. So,
thank you for the enlightening news.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not our. Of course, I realize I'm in the other half of the legislature these days, so I shouldn't generalize. Hopefully, it's neither your side nor our side of the legislature. So we should be.
Witnesses in support.
It was the Democrat caucus, I think.
Mr. Chairman, members, Mark Murray with Californians Against Waste in support of the measure. I do know that the California Integrated Waste Management Board was not on the list.
All right, thank you. Are there other witnesses in support? Are there witnesses in opposition? Are there any other comments or questions?
Good question.
Sir.
Good to see you.
Likewise. Good to be back. Good to be here. Good to be presenting a bill in the Senate.
As a former member of the Waste Integrated Management Board, isn't this something they could do on their own?
Well, the problem is they haven't been doing it on their own. And so you mean the Integrated Waste Management Board?
Yes.
No, they really don't have the authority to direct other state agencies. And so this is, I think, strengthens the board's authority to.
Something to do. Yeah, they may be looking for stuff to do, but I'm not.
Exactly.
One member at a time, please. And I think that's, Mr. Chisborough, I want to applaud your forbearance, sir. Do we have any other comments or questions? Would you like to close?
In closing, I'd just say, Mr. Ashburn, must you always engage in partisan rhetoric?
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, I shall.
I would ask for your aye vote.
On that cheery bipartisan note, could we have a motion in support? All right, we have a motion from Senator Pavley. And members, this is with amendments as indicated on page 3, comment number 3. The author has indicated his willingness to accept those as author's amendments. Motion incorporates those. Please call the roll.
Semidian.
Aye.
Semidian, aye. Runner.
Aye.
Runner, aye. Ashburn.
No.
Ashburn, no. Corbett. Aye. Corbett, aye. Hancock. Aye. Hancock, aye. Lowenthal.
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Pavley. Pavley, aye. That's 6 yes and 1 no.
6 ayes, 1 no. That bill is out. Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Let's thank Assemblymember Mendoza for his patience. Ask him to step forward. And members, that leaves us with 2 bills by Assemblymember Blumenfield. If we could ask the Sergeant at Arms to let the Assemblymember know he is the last remaining author, and we are waiting on him and him alone at this point. Thank you. Welcome, Assemblymember. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I'm here to present 1085, which will require the Air Resources Board to make available the information it uses in developing regulations prior to the opening 45-day comment period. This way, interested parties can evaluate and give thoughtful analysis prior to the adoption of rules and regulations by CARB. AB 1085 will strengthen the regulatory process by creating a consistent and complete data set for all stakeholders to draw from. In doing so, AB 1085 will allow for informed and thorough debate among stakeholders for all future CARB regulations. With me today is Kelly Jensen, representing the California Truckers Association, to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Witnesses in support. Any testimony?
Just a touch, please, Mr. Chair and members. Kelly Jensen, representing the California Trucking Association. As you know, the trucking industry has been under working with CARB on 4 separate regulatory matters, including the private fleet rule, the port rule, and others. And through that process, we have attempted to get certain data, and most of it has been forthcoming, some of it not forthcoming, and we're hoping this will expedite and further make the process more transparent. Ask for your act.
Thank you very much for your testimony. If we can get one other witness and then go to witnesses in support who simply want to give their name, their organization, and their support position. Welcome.
Mr. Chair and Senators, Matt Hart with the California Business Properties Association. Simply here in support of AB 1085. We see it as a sunshine law. As these complicated regulatory processes are moving forward, the more information you can get out to the public, the better, so you can get better analysis and make better decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Crystal Jack on behalf of the California Grocers Association in support of the bill.
Thank you. Next witness.
Robert Callahan with the California Chamber of Commerce. Here urge your aye vote on this bill. Thanks.
Thank you. Next witness.
Elizabeth Gavrick with the California Association of Realtors in support.
Thank you. Next witness. Do we have any other witnesses in support? If not, are there, if we can ask you to hold so that we can have additional comment. Do we have witnesses in opposition? Witnesses in opposition. Before we take a motion, are there comments or questions from members of the committee?
Just a
Senator Powell.
I didn't know, given the fiscal constraints, since that seems to be a theme running through all our bills today, whether, and I support the concept here on transparency and review, but directing the ARB to do that to the extent feasible. I mean, it's a mandate on a local agency. I don't know what the fiscal costs are. Department of Public Health just expressed concern. I think everyone is as they're dealing with works furloughs.
Someone, Member Mendoza, would you like to respond? You or your witness?
I say I believe this bill might be going to approach, and I would love to talk to them about it. I don't see any real fiscal impact, but if it goes to approach, we'll definitely take it up there.
Go ahead, Senator. I have any other questions? I have one question.
No, it's just that's the kind of language, and that way you could, it would be allowed to sort of move through without getting into trouble over there, but yet provide some flexibility to.
Mr. Chairman, on that point, Senator Pavley raises a very good point. This information otherwise is going to be requested through a Freedom of Information Act, and the departments are going to have to comply with that. That's an expenditure of time, man-hours, and internal resources. So one way or the other, the public's going to get it, the information that they're entitled to, and so this simply makes it clear that this shall all be open and available. I could see no cost addition because it's just going to be arrived at through a more laborious and expensive process.
Well, I do think it raises an interesting question, Assembly Member, and I would ask you to think about this as the measure moves forward to get out of here today, which is, it looks to me like you're amending the health and safety code on this issue. Ordinarily, as Senator Ashburn suggests, I think the information would be obtained using the California Public Records Act, which is the sort of the main means by which we access public information in the state of California, and there's a pretty robust system laid out there with a number of exceptions. And I guess the question I would ask is, did you think at all about simply putting this provision in the California Public Records Act, Public Records Act, as a way to sort of simplify and make sure that there wasn't a separate process apart from the existing process, but calling out the fact that this technical data was specifically included and not excluded, not on the list of things that were exempt from the Public Records Act? Different committee, not Environmental Quality Committee issue, but I would encourage you to think about that as the bill moves forward. Any comment on that? And not necessary, but if so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Kelly Jensen on behalf of the California Trucking Association. I think our hope is to have this data prior to the rulemaking, so a public records request would take some time, and the agency could sit on that and wait and give it to us at a less opportune time. So it's our hope that this bill would sort of instruct the agencies to be forthright in their data submissions.
All right. Well, let me ask the author to make this one commitment. Would you please commit to be prepared to commit that you'll make sure that you harmonize whatever it is you're doing with the Public Records Act, so that the two don't bump into one another on this issue? Because what we'd hate to see is a cleanup bill coming back next year because there was some incompatibility between the two measures.
Sure, sure will, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Then it would be appropriate to take a motion at this time. Thank you, Senator Ashburn and members. This is AB 1085 by Assemblymember Mendoza. We have a motion from Mr. Ashburn. Please call the roll.
Simidian?
Aye.
Simidian, aye. Runner? Aye. Runner, aye. Ashburn? Aye. Ashburn, aye. Corbett? Corbett, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lowenthal? Aye. Lowenthal, aye. Pavley? Pavley, aye. 7 yes.
All right. 7-0, that bill is out. I'm going to ask you to work with our committee staff to make sure the issue of harmonization with the Public Records Act gets addressed. All right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Assemblymember Blumenfield is here, I believe. I saw him. Did he step out? There he is. Welcome. We have 2 issues before us today. Assemblymember with your name as the author, AB 473, which deals with solid waste, multifamily dwellings. Why don't you go ahead and present?
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members. I'm here today on behalf of AB 473. It's about apartment recycling. Specifically, it requires apartment buildings owners of 5 or more units to provide recycling services to their tenants. What's special about this bill, it's flexible rather than prescriptive. Specifically, in communities where cities already provide residential recycling, such as Los Angeles, it may simply mean opting into a city's program. In areas where there are no such program, the building owner may make arrangements with whomever picks up their disposable solid waste already to include a recycling component into the contract. The reason I'm doing this bill is I know that renters want to recycle. I used to be a renter for many years, and I wanted to recycle, and I think they're no less environmentally conscious than homeowners. And this is a way to give them the access to be able to do so. Apartment dwellers don't have the same recycling opportunities currently. If you're one of more than 7 million Californians living in an apartment, chances are you're not able to recycle where you live. Fewer than 40% of persons living in multifamily dwellings have access to residential recycling, compared to 70% of those who live in single-family homes. Expanding recycling to 2.4 million apartments will significantly increase our solid waste diversion efforts. Currently, of the waste generated in multifamily dwellings, only 15% is diverted away from landfills. Compare that to single-home family units that divert more than 50%. Some communities have achieved recycling rates exceeding 50% for multifamily dwellings simply by making recycling services available to the tenants. Recycling is important because 60% of our garbage in landfills can be composted or recycled. Providing recycling services at apartments is one of the most effective means available for increasing the diversion and recycling of solid waste, thereby achieving the attendant benefits for the environment and the community. And that's why I'm here today to ask for your aye vote.
Testimony and support.
Mr. Chair, members, Mark Murray with Californians Against Waste in support of the measure. As has been noted, residents of apartments have less opportunities to recycle than residents of single-family homes. The issue of 2 issues have been raised by opponents of this measure in the past. One is the availability of space, and the other is the availability of recycling services in that community. Since 1994, all buildings in California have been required to make space for recycling if they had any kind of design change or if it was a new building post-1994. So that's been in place for nearly 15 years now. In terms of recycling services, we have now hundreds of recycling service providers in the state. Everyone that provides solid waste disposal services in the state also provides recycling services. So again, whether an apartment is contracting with a private service provider for their solid waste disposal services, or whether they are as is the case in the city of Los Angeles, they're having their waste collected by the city. Both of those operators provide recycling services. Both of those operators can, if requested, provide the recycling service for multifamily dwellings. We urge your aye vote.
Okay, other testimony and support.
Mr. Chair, members, Justin Malone with the Alameda County Waste Management Authority, the local environmental health directors, and the League of Conservation Voters very much in support of the bill, particularly as we look to going beyond our 50% diversion goal. I don't think we can do it without this. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Mark Aprea on behalf of Republic Services, and we would urge your aye vote that we think this measure is consistent with the views that we have taken, that as the legislature looks at increasing solid waste diversion, that it provide local governments and solid waste providers and residences greater opportunities and greater tools to achieve those goals. We urge your aye vote.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Lundgren on behalf of the Orange County Board of Supervisors in support. Thank you.
Okay, other testimony and support? There's testimony in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Monica Guillen from the California Apartment Association. As members of this committee are probably aware, we have opposed this bill historically due to practical limitations of property as well as what we perceive to be unworkably vague language in the bill. I'm pleased to report, after several years of being in this position, that we are working with the author's office, and I'm very optimistic that if this bill does move forward, we'll be able to resolve our concerns.
Okay. So currently you are in what position?
Currently, we are opposed.
And feeling like you are making some headway in regards to those issues?
We are making headway in that, as has been represented by Mr. Murray, the services are available. He made the distinction between pre- and post-1994 construction. We have a lot of buildings that are pre-94 construction. What we would like to see is simply language that clarifies that the owner has to contract for services that are not only appropriate but are also available. So we would recommend putting appropriate and available in the bill, and just ensuring some other considerations such as financial considerations are also incorporated into the bill.
Okay, Senator Lowenthal.
Tell me, this bill has had a number of iterations in previous authors at this point. I think Assemblymember Montañez had a bill. I think Assemblymember Levine. How is this bill different? Anybody?
It's not.
It's not. Okay.
This bill is going to get signed by the governor and put into law.
The next question. The other
okay. That's the difference.
That is different. I often wonder why, and I'm very supportive of the bill. Why do we not also include office buildings, commercial buildings, resident? Besides just multifamily resident, why are we not looking elsewhere besides the individual residents?
So there are some bills moving through that deal with a larger issue, and I have a feeling that you're going to get a chance to see some of those bills. I'm looking at trying to just this is a piece.
I understand. Take one piece at a time. That's been dealt with a number of times in the past. It's a reasonable step. I was just wondering, the larger issue, where are we, and whether there were, was anybody addressing that issue?
Sounds like another bill to be coming.
Mr. Chairman, members, there will be a bill before this committee in 2 weeks that deals with the broader issue of commercial recycling for all private generators of solid waste. And this committee has actually already passed a bill, SB 25, which dealt with that measure earlier this year. So the broader issue of bringing all private sector generators of waste in line with recycling services that's where we're moving, and we're just trying to, with this bill, deal with this one piece.
Okay. Any other? Senator Hancock.
Yeah. I'm very supportive of this bill, as I have been in its other iterations, and I just wanted to thank the Apartment Association for being willing to work with the author on this and to see if we can't take some action this year. I have an apartment in Sacramento, and I have to say I feel like a bag lady every Thursday driving back with my newspapers and my mixed paper in a little bag because I can't recycle it. It all has to go in a big bin. We'll talk later. So I would move this bill, Senator Runner, and if there are amendments that are taken in the future, would like the opportunity to be added as a co-author.
Okay, there's a motion on this bill. I would continue the dialogue with the opposition. I think you're right. That will help you a great deal as this bill moves along and downstairs. I think until we actually see the language for myself that is being looked at, I won't be supportive. But based on that, we'll call the roll. Thank you. Oh, would you like to close? I'm sorry.
I just respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Simidian? Runner?
No.
Runner, no. Ashburn? Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Hancock? Aye. Hancock, aye. Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. Havley? Aye. Havley, aye. At 4 yes and 1 no.
4 yes, 1 no, and we'll leave the roll open. And now we have a second bill, I believe. That's AB 1186.
Should I present? Thank you very much. here today now on behalf of AB 1186. It's a parking cash out bill. Mr. Chair and members, this bill lays the groundwork for increased participation in the existing parking cash out program. Parking cash out program was passed back in the early 90s by one of my successors, Richard Katz, and the current program directs employers of 50 or more persons to offer employees the cash value of their parking subsidy as an incentive to get commuters out of their cars and into alternative transportation. The City of Los Angeles, which is sponsoring this legislation, has found that one of the obstacles to broader use of the parking cash out program is that employers who rent office space are often not able to quantify the cost of the parking subsidy because it's rolled into the overall cost of the lease and not broken out into a separate item. This bill addresses that problem by asking the owners of commercial buildings to simply disclose the parking costs in the lease agreement. We know that the financial incentive is one of the best ways to change human behavior. A cash incentive to not drive to work is a painless way to help reduce traffic congestion and reduce air quality impacts from the commute. I agree with the comment, number 6 in the committee analysis for suggested technical amendments, and I'd like to take those amendments.
The amendments are being taken as author amendments.
Great. And with that, I think this is a good bill, and I ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Testimony and support, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Andrew Antwi with Shaw Yoder and Antwi here today on behalf of the City of Los Angeles. We thank Assemblymember Blumenfield for bringing this bill forward. We think what this bill proposal does is it just makes a smart change to an existing program to try and increase utilization of a program that's been on the books since 1992, to try and get commuters to take advantage of the parking cash out program. The experiment here, if you will, is if more employers had information about what their actual subsidy that they're already paying is, would they take advantage of the program? We think the answer is yes. The City of Los Angeles is one of a number of communities around the state that is looking for smart ways to comply with new proposals like Senate Bill 375, which require them to reduce vehicular trips. And we think that one of the things we're going to have to do is take a look at existing programs and see whether or not we can squeeze out more efficiencies from them. And so we think this bill goes a long way towards that end. We ask for your support.
Okay, thank you. Additional.
Good afternoon. Tim Carmichael with the Coalition for Clean Air and strong support. Especially with the committee amendments taken by the author, this is a very reasonable bill, simply requiring that the tenants get information that will be helpful to them. And in fact, with the amendments, it gives them the landlord more time to provide that information. We think the committee should support it, and this will help in our bigger picture air quality battle in the state. Thank you.
Other testimony and support? Testimony in opposition? Support?
I'm Laura Hoffman of the Planning Conservation League, and we are in support of this bill.
Okay, thank you. Testimony and support?
I'm trying to slip in between support and opposition if I could address the amendments.
Testimony and concern.
No. Matthew Hart with the California Business Properties Association, and I'd very much like to thank the committee consultant and the author and several other folks that we've been working with on this bill. We identified a technical concern with this bill, and when we brought it to the author last week and the committee consultant, they immediately recognized that the bill was might have been more broadly applied than they had intended. So we've been working with amendments, and once those amendments suggested in the analysis are adopted, that will remove all of our concerns with the bill.
Is that those are amendments other than what we're...
No, the amendments that were just taken, they'll define employer, they'll clarify who the bill applies to, and they'll provide flexibility about when that information is provided.
So your issues are satisfied with the amendments that were taken today by the author?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did I hear you say that you're in support now?
Our issues are fully addressed. I need to take this back to my association, but thank you.
Okay. No subsidy. Gotcha. Okay. Testimony in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, Ron Kingston representing the Apartment Association California Southern Cities, Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, and the Santa Barbara Rental Properties Owner Association. Our members own and manage not only apartments, but also commercial properties. We've had an opportunity to vet this not only with the owners and the managers, but as well as commercial real estate brokers who work on negotiating all forms of commercial leases. And just by way of background and the reason why we oppose the bill, I think it's really important to set the stage a little bit. There are a lot of times that the lessors of the buildings enter into an agreement with third-party providers. In downtown urban core settings, the high-rise, middle-rise, or even parking lot structures are provided by some other company, some other entity. And the only thing that the lessor does is have a contract saying we can just lease this property to some of our tenants. And we'll describe why this bill is problematic on that point in a minute. Secondly, let's just kind of break down this thing. In suburban areas, it is a much different discussion than urbanized areas. Downtown core LA, Long Beach, Berkeley, for example, it doesn't make much difference. But if you get out into the suburban areas and you have a grocery store that employs next to him 100 employees, many times the lessors will say, you get 4 spaces, or we are providing 4 spaces, and the benefit of the bargain, everything else is free. So how do you charge, in this bill, the 4 tenants and determine that type of cost balanced against everything else is provided as part of the benefit of the bargain? That is, when you go out and buy a good or service, a lot of times the company will throw in a good to close the deal. And that's what happens in commercial real estate leases quite often. Secondly, the other problem with this bill is determining cost. We don't see the nexus of determining cost of getting people out of the cars. It is more relevant in our judgment. If you want to get people out of the cars, give them an alternative commuting opportunity. And that's what they will pursue. It's got to be realistic, achievable, and accessible as well as safe. That's not what this bill is doing. All this bill is doing is saying we are going to determine in some ethereal way of what the parking costs could be. Let's talk about parking costs real quickly. Parking costs can be CAM costs, community area management, taxes, maintenance, other types of major renovations over a short term or a long term. This bill is not. What we're suggesting is, if this bill were properly directed, allow, just say, like Mr. Lowenthal's bill did earlier this year, say what the mass transit cost is, and that's what the fee should be. There's the nexus. You have alternative transportation costs and putting the employee in that. But determining what the parking costs are just next to impossible. We don't know one commercial real estate broker or one commercial landlord that said this is achievable, accessible, or can be defined whatsoever. Second, this bill can also open the lease open to all employees challenging what the parking fees are. And we don't believe that's appropriate at all. It's not the employee's right to access the lease between the lessee and the lessor.
I want to thank you for your testimony, and forgive me for stepping in a little bit late. Let me ask a couple of quick questions, if I may. And again, apologize I had to step away to present in the assembly on the assembly side. Shane, you're here on behalf of the apartment association, as I understand it.
Well, our members own not only apartment association apartments, but also commercial properties.
Okay, thank you. That was my first question. Now, the second thing is, when there's a rent control ordinance that allows for pass-throughs based on specific components, folks who own and manage property have no difficulty whatsoever in identifying what the component costs are for purposes of a pass-through. I find it hard to believe that folks who wanted to make a good faith effort to determine what the parking costs were couldn't identify what those costs were, particularly since they had to sit down in the first place and figure out what it was appropriate to charge somebody and what would give them a reasonable rate of return, and therefore what their own costs were. So help me understand that.
There's a substantial difference between rental and commercial for parking. Largely, as I was saying, as you were out of the committee room, Mr. Smidian, is that most leases, in this case, aren't like residential. Residential will say, Mr. Pester, you're renting apartment number 3. You are now assigned parking space number 3. If you're leasing a large piece of property, the landlords don't know how many people are going to be actually occupying that space. It could be 40, it could be 60. They don't keep track of that. That's a much materially different. Second, when that is being assigned, instead of just saying 1 space per employee, it's 4 spaces per 1,000 feet for 1,500, and everything else is thrown in. In other words, provided for free as part of, as I was saying, part of the benefit of the bargain. So in terms of a commercial or a residential lease, it is so materially different that it's not fair to kind of compare these. And what we had offered as a suggestion, because Ms. Beamish and the sponsors with whom we met last week were very, very gracious about it, we had said we see a proper nexus of doing one thing, saying pay for the alternative forms of transportation to get the employees out, and then we're off the bill. Then we really get it. We understand the bill and its application.
All right. Are there comments or questions from other members of the committee? Do we have somebody who wants to come back up and respond on this particular issue, or does the assembly member want to respond, or how would you like to?
I just wanted to make sure we clarify. We're working on some of the amendments with the author and the member, and the issue goes back to subsidized parking. Under the parking cash out program, the way that we can tell what, and I know you have a bill on this, that we can tell how much those parking spaces are, because it all goes back to the word subsidized parking, and the current language doesn't have that in here, and that was a huge stumbling block for our members. With these amendments that have been worked out, that brings back in the definition of current law, which has been there since I believe 1992, of subsidized parking. So those are all parking spaces that are above and beyond whatever the base lease is, and that's what the parking cash out program was supposed to focus on, and that's why my members are okay once we bring it back to focusing the costs of this program on those subsidized parking spaces. You don't have to break it out of your base lease. You know what those cost because they're charged above and beyond the base lease.
Okay. And let me just say, Mr. Kingston, I thank you for taking the time to reiterate, but my understanding of the underlying law here, which is Mr. Katz's back to 1992, as I recall.
Yeah, correct.
I appreciate your point about there needing to be a nexus. The nexus, however, is established in existing law, and it is, as the speaker just mentioned, not the cost of commute alternatives, but the actual dollar amount attached to the subsidized parking space. So I think we'd be headed in the wrong direction if we started talking about a dollar amount that reflected some commute alternative. The whole point of the parking cash out program is to say, let's take that dollar amount and make it available that is associated with the additional increment associated with providing the space. Any other comments or questions? Then let's ask for a motion on the bill with amendments, and we will give you, Ms. Blum, before we take the motion, go ahead and we'll give you the opportunity to close.
I do have a question.
Great, thank you.
Maybe you could outline this whole program to me and what this is going to add, because in reading the bill, it just says that these things are going to be listed as separate items.
Well, we sort of, with the discussion here, we got off on this question of the parking cash out program, which is underlying all of this, but that's really not what we're debating here. We're debating a very simple bill that will make it easier to implement the parking cash out program, to require the actual cost of parking in the lease, or if it's not in the lease, 30 days after, they can provide that to the employer. So that's really the simple part of the bill, and then the whole question about what's in the parking cash out has been determined back in 1992.
Mr. Blue, let me try and speak to this issue a little bit, and please correct me if I have it wrong, sir. There is an existing parking cash out program, and what it says is if you're an employer of 50 persons or more and you provide parking, not on your own facility, but parking that you lease, then rather than simply lease those spaces, you have to turn around and say to your employees, if you'd rather I not lease you the space and provide you with that subsidized parking, I can take the same amount of money I'm paying for that parking space and give it to you. That's a parking cash out program in existing law, as the Assembly member points out. The point of his bill, as I read it, please again correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's a little hard to do that if you don't know what the cost of the parking space is. So his bill says, hey, when you're leasing facilities, please make sure you tell us not what the gross facility cost is, but what the per parking space cost is as a separate increment, so that we can in fact comply with state law by providing the parking cash-out option to those employees who wish to take it. Is that a fair summary?
Very well stated, yes.
Thank you. That's going to count as your close, by the way. So let's go. I'm just kidding. Let's go. Does that answer your question?
It does answer my question. Thank you very much. So the cash out might be more than a transit pass or less than a transit pass, depending on. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on this issue? Your close, in all seriousness, and then we're ready for a motion.
Just briefly, I mean, we have AB 32. We're trying to get to those goals. We need incentives to do that. This is a great program, the Parking Cash Out, because it provides people and businesses an incentive to help us move in the right direction in terms of air quality. It's a fairly simple in what it does, and it'll help us comply with existing state law. And with that, I ask for your aye vote.
Motion by Senator Hancock.
No.
Not yet.
No, but I do have a question.
Please.
Why, if the option is to give a transit pass, I don't know, that seems like a good option to me, the option that Mr. Kingston raised. But I guess what you're saying is that you could have a transit pass and $20 too, if parking was really expensive. Wouldn't it be an incentive for employers to comply if a transit pass was a little less than a parking pass, which it is in many cities?
Well, I mean, we can talk about how it's working in the city of Los Angeles.
Before you do, let me weigh in again, and I ask the committee's forbearance, but since I'm working in this field this year, it's timely information. The challenge in that instance is that if the parking space costs $100, then having that $100 allows the employee to make his or her own judgments about how best to get to work. So the employee might say, great, I'm going to get that $100 a month, and I'm going to use it to buy a bicycle and the necessary equipment for my bicycle, and I'm going to cycle to work. Or the employee might say, I'm going to use that money to take a transit pass, and that's how I'm going to get to work. Or the employee might say, you know what? Driving to work with Senator Ashburn is so much fun, I'm going to carpool with Senator Ashburn and split the gas costs. But by giving the actual dollar amount associated with the parking cash-out program to the employee, you allow the employee to make the choice about what is the most cost-effective way and, given individual circumstances, the most practical way for him or her to get to work without solo commuting and using that individual parking space. And as you pointed out a minute ago, Senator, it may be that after sharing the gas costs with Senator Ashburn, we've not only done the more environmentally sound thing, we've saved $30 a month, and the employee is to the good and happy for it.
Interesting. Well, I happen to represent a city that gives every employee a transit pass. And would this bill mean they would have to, if the transit pass is less money, then this cash out, give employees a check as well?
You're saying the city gives them the transit pass?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this wouldn't have an effect. This only affects if an employer, in addition to that transit pass, is providing a subsidized parking space in your city, then it would have, if they're not providing a subsidized parking space because they're taking advantage of this, then this would have no effect. But if the employer is already giving them a parking space and it's worth $100, they can then get the $100.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
We've had a close, we've had questions and answers, we have a motion now from Senator Hancock. Time to call the roll.
Semidian, aye. Runner? No. Runner, no. Ashburn? No. Ashburn, no. Corbett? Aye. Corbett, aye. Hancock? Hancock, aye. Lowenthal? Hadley? 3 yes and 2 no.
3 ayes, 2 no. Your bill is on call. We will hold a roll for absent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Never thought parking cash out would generate this much conversation this year, so there you go. We're going to lift the call, members, and if Sergeant at Arms could let Senator Pavley and Senator Lowenthal know that they are needed here to close out the roll, that would be helpful. But I want to lift the calls right now. Sergeant at Arms, you can keep folks quiet on the way out the door, please. Thank you. Let's call the absent members on all items, starting with agenda item number 1 and working our way through the file. And why don't we ask the clerk to indicate the current vote, chair's vote, vice chair's vote, and then call the absent members.
Item 1, AB 248, current vote, 5-1, with the chair voting aye, the vice chair voting aye.
Call the absent members.
Corbett. Corbett, aye. That's 6-1.
6-1, that bill is out. File item number 2, Assembly Bill 301, Fuentes.
Present vote, 4-2, with the chair voting aye and the vice chair voting no.
Call the absent members.
Corbett. Corbett, aye. That's 5-2.
That bill is out. File item number 3, AB 473, Blumenfield, solid waste multifamily dwellings.
Current vote, 4-1, with the chair absent and the vice chair voting no.
Call the absent members.
Semidian.
Semidian, aye.
Semidian, aye. Ashburn. No. Ashburn, no. That's 5 yes and 2 no.
5-2, that bill is out. File item number 4, AB 499 by Hill.
Present vote, 4-2, with the chair voting aye and the vice chair voting no.
Call the absent members.
Corbett. Aye. Corbett, aye. That's 5-2.
5-2, that bill is out. Agenda item number 5 is AB 752. This was the single item on our consent calendar by Assemblymember Arambula.
Present vote, 6-0, with the chair and vice chair voting aye.
Call the absent members.
Corbett. Corbett, aye.
7-0 on the consent calendar. Mr. Arambula's bill is out. Agenda item number 6 by Assemblymember Caballero was pulled at the author's request. Agenda item number 7, I'm going to confirm with the clerk. The vote on that is 6-1, and that bill is out. Agenda item number 8, AB 1069.
Present vote is 4-2, with the chair voting aye and the vice chair voting no. Corbett. Aye. Corbett, aye. That's 5-2.
And that bill is out. That takes us to agenda item number 9, and that bill has a 7-0 vote, and
Correct.
that bill is out, and I'm confirming that. All right. Takes us to agenda item number 10.
Present vote, 3-2, with the chair voting aye and the vice chair voting no. Lowenthal, Pavley.
3-2, we're going to keep that bill on call. Place the bill back on call, please. 3-2. And then item number 11, AB 1507, Mr. Block.
That was put over.
That bill was put over. We have disposed of all bills on the agenda, members, with the exception of agenda item number 10, AB 1186, Blumenfield. Current vote is 3-2, and we are waiting on Senators Pavley and Lowenthal. And as soon as they are able to join us, we will lift the call and close out the agenda. Going to lift the call on agenda item number 10. This is AB 1186 by Assemblymember Bloomfield, employee parking.
Yes, I was there for the beginning of that, and I apologize, I was presenting in another committee.
Not a problem. Understood, Senator. Thank you for hushing back.
Prepared.
Call the absent members.
Pavley. Lowenthal. That's 4 yes, 2 no.
4-2. That bill has sufficient votes, but we will hold the roll open for absent members and ask Senator Lowenthal to join us when he can, please. Thank you, Senator Pavley. I think we have your vote on every other item. Senator Pavley, if you want to ask your question with the microphone on her.
Just out of curiosity, if the roll is still open, can votes be changed if it doesn't affect the outcome of the vote, even though it's passed? But the roll is still open. I just don't know what the rules are.
Yeah. The question wasn't about items that have already been closed. The question was if an item was open may a vote be changed while the roll is still open if it does not affect the outcome of the vote. So
You can do it on the floor. I just didn't know if you could do it in committee.
we'll check and have an answer for you before the next committee meeting. Sergeant, do we expect Senator Lowenthal to be able to join us shortly? to lift the call on agenda item number 10, AB 1186, Blumenfield employee parking. Current vote is 4-2, and we're going to ask the clerk to call the absent members.
Lowenthal?
Aye.
Lowenthal, aye. It's 5-2.
That bill is out. Members without objection, the meeting is
So
adjourned.
wait a second, I didn't vote on the other Bloomington.
I believe we,
Did I vote on that one? I'm not sure whether I did get an opportunity to vote on that.
on AB 473, which is agenda 3,
No, I did.
we have a 5-2 vote with all members present and voting. Without objection, meeting is adjourned.